Welcome, everybody. We are on our Q&A call for the month, and our topic today is self-publishing. And with us, I have Dr. Heidi Thorne. Welcome, Heidi.
Hello, Michelle. Good to talk to you.
You too. I'm so glad that you're taking time with us today to share your expertise and all your background and knowledge in the self-publishing world. Thank you so much.
You're entirely welcome.
Wonderful. Well, I wanted to give everybody a little heads up before I get started into some of my questions with Heidi, and we're going to do this in a little Q&A format. I'm going to ask Heidi some questions, and she'll share some with us. And we are pre-recording this, so if you have questions that come up along the way, you can go post them in that Facebook event. Dr. Heidi is actually, Dr. Thorne is actually in there with us, and if there is a question that comes up, she won't be answering it live because she was unavailable today. That's why we're actually pre-recording the call. But you can go in there, and if it's something she's able to easily answer, she will. If it's something that's a much bigger thing, she'll let you know that too. And to that point, we're going to be hitting high points today because if we start getting way too deep, of course, that can become overwhelming. And we know from, that's from past calls that can be the issue. So we're trying to stay high level with some things, but also give you lots of deep information. There won't be any visuals on this call. We're just doing it as an audio. So make sure to take some notes and because we'll be sharing lots and lots of information. And then there is a resource I'm going to talk about at the end that has a lot of this information on Dr. Thorne's blog. So there is some reference that you can go back to for some written things if you're not sure if you took a note right or not. So with all that being said, we're going to start on our first question, which is, what is a self-publishing platform?
Well, a lot of people hear a lot of different things out there. There's CreateSpace, and there's Amazon KDP, and there's Smashwords, and Ex Libris, and there's just all kinds of publishing platforms. And I think we really have to take a step back first and figure out what exactly is a self-publishing platform. Now, a platform like this, you can call it a service or a company, but what they do is they provide tools and resources and services to help people get their books, either print books or ebooks, out into the world. So a lot of those platforms have templates, they have tools, they will convert manuscripts from a Word document to either a print or ebook format. Some of the services they do offer, though, are at a fee in addition to whatever else they do for you. So for example, they will offer editing and proofreading services if you don't do them on your own. They may do a book cover design and the interior design and layout. They may also provide you with what's called an ISBN number. Now, an ISBN number stands for International Standard Book Number. It is a long, 10 to 13 digit number that puts your book into the Books in Print database that bookstores, libraries, and just about everyone in the publishing world refers to. So sometimes they do provide that. So for example, on CreateSpace, they can provide one for free, but if you want one that's called Portable, which you can move to another service in the future, you can pay a little bit of money for that. But a lot of these do offer them for free. These platforms can also provide printing of physical books, and they do that with what's called print on demand. Now, for example, on Amazon's CreateSpace, if I wanted to order one copy of my book, I could. So that is the beauty of print on demand. It doesn't make you purchase hundreds and hundreds of copies of your book that sit in boxes in your garage from here until you move out of your house. So that's a real advantage. The other thing that they do is they offer distribution and marketing services. Now, in my mind, these are some of the key benefits of working with a self-publishing platform as opposed to doing it on your own. And I'll go through what doing it on your own means in a second. But what these platforms do is they can get you into places where your book can be sold. So you're not doing it yourself. For example, if you work with Amazon's CreateSpace or their Kindle Direct Publishing, when you publish your book through their system, they make sure that it gets on Amazon. So that is the world's premier bookseller, and I know I want my books there, so that is a real key advantage. Some of the other platforms can also integrate with Amazon or other booksellers and other book outlets, so you really have to look and see what availability they have in terms of distribution, because that should be one of your key reasons to go with or reject a particular self-publishing service or platform. In terms of marketing services, some of them do offer some basic PR type of services. Some go really far along in the marketing and PR aspects, but I will tell you that those can be very, very expensive. And some of them also, particularly if you use the CreateSpace and Kindle Direct Publishing programs, they take care of the actual sale of books and ebooks to end users, and then you are out of the loop, which is amazing. And you have to look at all this. This is a huge package of services and products that they are offering you. If you had to do this on your own, and I do have authors who do it on their own, you would have to print the books by yourself. You would have to lay out the books by yourself. You would have to, when I say print the books, I mean you're actually working with a commercial printer. And I will tell you that there are limited resources for printing what's called a perfect bound book. It's like a typical paperback book that you would buy in a store. You're not going to go to your local quick print shop, although I'm sure at some point in the future that might be possible. But those kind of services, you're dealing with a really higher level commercial printer. So you better know what you're buying, because, you could spend thousands of dollars and then again you have the boxes of books in your garage. So you certainly don't want that. And even if you print the books on your own, there's no guarantee that you're going to get distribution other than those that you sell to maybe your friends and family or through your website or wherever, maybe at your speaking events. So these self-publishing platforms provide a lot to you. So yes, you have to be careful when you look at them so that you don't get taken. And one of the things is, although there's very few of them out there, you want to make sure that you retain your copyrights to any books you publish through them. I know through CreateSpace and Kindle Direct Publishing, you do own your books. They're what they call non-exclusive, so you want to make sure that when you look at any of these contracts or terms of service, that you retain the copyrights to any books you publish with them. So that's kind of a quick overall view of what a self-publishing platform does, and yes, their services can be a real help to authors.
So I know when I sit there and I listen to you go through all that, Heidi, and I don't know everybody else sitting there listening, but oh my gosh, my head just starts glossing over because there is so many details and there's so much to know. And so I know when I did my book, it was instantly like, well, I'm going to go to Amazon. I'm going to go to CreateSpace because it's something everybody uses, and there's obviously lots of things already built in where I know I'm being protected, and they have their I's dots and their T's crossed. And I think a lot of people most people on the call, I don't know that I've heard anybody ever think about going the route of their own, finding that, that commercial printer or any of that. I think everybody's pretty sold on, yeah, a self-publishing platform is important. And so that leads us really well into the next question of, you know, everybody hears about CreateSpace and says, you know, well, use CreateSpace, use CreateSpace. There's other ones out there as well. So tell us a little bit about the most popular self-publishing platforms and then the pros and cons of each as to why you would use one over another.
Okay, well, let's start with the most popular one out there, which would be for print books. It would be Amazon CreateSpace, and the reason that they are so popular is that they are free if you do all the services. If you do all your own layout and you can do your own cover design on there and everything, it's essentially free to use. And it's also print on demand. So like I said earlier, you could order one copy of your book. So you don't even have to, you know, order 10, 25, 100 copies of your book. So they make it extremely cost effective. And CreateSpace is tightly integrated because they are an Amazon company. They are completely integrated in the Amazon universe. So you can make your book available on Amazon. Now, some authors who use CreateSpace, they choose not to make it available on Amazon. They just want to be able to get, you know, the good printing prices from CreateSpace and then sell it on their own. But whether you do that or not, they give you a page on the CreateSpace platform as well, in addition to anything you might choose for Amazon, and you could send all of your customers to the CreateSpace page for your book, and they can buy it right there. They handle all the shipping and payment for any of your customers that want to buy a physical book. And that's a real hassle if you're an author, is to handle the physical mailing out of books and handling the payments and everything. So that's a real advantage there. Now, Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing is strictly for Kindle ebooks. Now, some authors are confused and concerned about that because they say, well, what if all of my buyers and readers, what if they don't have a Kindle? Well, you know, it's really okay because Amazon has the Kindle Reading app, which is free, and you can read a Kindle ebook on any device. You can read it on a cell phone. You can read it on a tablet. You can read it on a desktop. So that's really a non-issue these days. You really don't have to worry about that at all. So that's a good one. It's also extremely easy. And I should mention this also. On both CreateSpace and Kindle Direct Publishing, you can publish direct from a Microsoft Word document. So you don't have to spend on, you know, extra software. You don't have to learn any layout programs. So that makes it really, really easy for authors who want to get published quickly and easily. So I found it to be really easy. There are some things you have to be aware of as you get your Microsoft Word document together, and the documentation files on both CreateSpace and Kindle are helpful. So, you know, that's easy, ready to go. Now, something new that has occurred very recently on the Kindle platform is that they say, okay, you've published your ebook, now do you want a print book too? So I'm seeing a lot of melding going on between that print and ebook universe on the Amazon side. So watch for developments on the Kindle platform for converting your ebook into a print book. So, and that's just in kind of beta mode right now, so be looking for developments on that. So they're trying to make it as easy as possible, and those are really self-service platforms. So you're going to just put it up there yourself. You're not going to need any real help in doing it, and you're ready to rock and roll. So that's the two primary ones that people use these days. I would say the other two that I have found other authors using that I know. They use Smashwords for ebooks. And this would be if you're interested in getting your books in anything other than Amazon. So that would be probably your primary reason for being there. Again, they make it pretty easy to get your ebook up from a Microsoft Word document. So it's reasonable, and it's something to think about. But when I've done some research, you don't want to do both Kindle and Smashwords. You have to make a choice one way or the other, because I know I said, well, hey, I'm on Kindle, and they said, well, it's probably not advisable. And the reason you don't want to have like multiple platforms going on, like especially for ebooks, is you don't want to confuse everything. As well, on like Amazon Kindle and CreateSpace, you can select what's called expanded distribution, meaning that your book can be available through other outlets, other distribution outlets, through bookstores or other places. So check both CreateSpace, Kindle, and Smashwords to see what is the best and ideal platform for you. Now, one that is also a little bit different than some of the other platforms is Lulu.com. And the one reason that a lot of authors use them is because they offer hardcover books. CreateSpace and, of course, the ebook platforms don't do that. So if you're going with CreateSpace, you're going with a perfect bound paperback. But on Lulu, you can get a hardcover book. And it's a little more expensive, especially the more elaborate your book is. It's going to get pretty expensive. But Lulu, like CreateSpace and some of these other platforms, has a full range of services, and I've heard some positive things from other writers and authors. So those are the advantages. CreateSpace and Kindle Direct Publishing are probably the easiest and least expensive. Smashwords is inexpensive and offers some additional options. But then Lulu is the choice if you want to look at doing a hardcover edition. So those are pretty much the pros and cons of some of the more popular ones out there. There are tons of them. And I think there's getting to be more and more of these platforms out there because the technology with print on demand is becoming more available. And so you're seeing more companies trying to wander in. There's also one more that is extremely important to consider, and a lot of people in the publishing world have a lot of respect for it. It's called Ingram Spark. And you want to look at that, look it up online as well. I've heard a lot of good things about that as well. And they do some of the very same services that CreateSpace and Lulu would do for you, but they're with Ingram, which is a big distribution company for books. So you definitely want to give them a look as well. And I think they're pretty reasonable, but look at all of those. Those are the primary ones that you want to consider.
Cool, and I just pulled that up online. I'm looking, the spelling is INGRAMSPARK, Ingram Spark, for anyone looking online. So yeah, and it looks like they do print on demand as well, yep. Heidi?
They do. And they have a very good reputation in the publishing world, so they are certainly worth considering as well. So these are the primary ones that I've heard other authors using for ease of use and for the services they do offer. So, but like I said, there's a lot of them out there. So certainly, if you see something that looks intriguing, check them out, but make sure that all of your rights are protected and that it fits in with your budget.
Great, great tips. One of the things I know we have a couple people in the group, as well as myself, who are in the process of starting children's books. And so, like, if you're looking to do, it sounds like from what you explained, a children's book that you want to be hardcovered, you would go to the Lulu platform, correct?
Probably. That would probably be something you would want to give some serious consideration to. It will be kind of expensive if you're doing it on your own because, there's the covers and all of that. It's usually full color, which usually is more expensive as well. But that would be probably one you'd want to look at first. Simply because, a lot of children's books are hardcover, and it's just for a durability issue. And although some people have used, the perfect bound soft cover books, I know a lot of parents like a hardcover. So I'd certainly look at Lulu first, and then see if that fits your needs, and then do a little research from there.
So with and the one thing with the Lulu, and you may have mentioned this, I may have missed it, but does the Lulu also do print on demand?
Yes, they do, and you can order as many copies as you need. So yeah, there's on demand source, and I will just double check that, but they are, as far as I know, I have not used them personally. I've only heard very good things from them, about them, from other authors, but they do offer book printing services and some really easy tools to get it done too. So definitely.
Yeah, it looks like it. Their website looks pretty cool. As I just pulled that up too. I know one of the people in our group is Stacy Montgomery from Stacy M Design, and she is in the process of working on a children's book, and she's looking at hardcover versus softcover because that's really in alignment with her brand and kind of being that higher end sort of thing for her publishing end. The other couple people that come to mind, I know Karen's working on one, Karen Carlson, for Be Well and Renew, for her eye pillows, to accompany her eye pillows, and I'm actually working on one with the boys for parents who have kids and getting the kids to understand how to be able to work with a parent who runs a business. And for Karen and myself, that hardcover isn't important because it's not necessarily part of our brand. The soft covers are perfectly fine. It makes better sense to do them less expensively. But for Stacy's, it definitely ties in with the brand. So to the soft cover point then, for Karen and myself, is that something that you can do on Ingram Spark and on CreateSpace as well?
Yes, you can do color. Yes, you can do color printing on CreateSpace as well. I have had a couple other friends who have done that. It does get more expensive because it's a different kind of paper, and the shipping might be a little bit more and everything too if you order a bunch of copies. But the full color printing, it can get very pricey. Even on CreateSpace, you're going to get, even if you have a black and white book on the inside, your cover will be full color at no extra charge. So it's really, when you're doing a color book on CreateSpace, you're paying extra for the color interior of the book.
Right.
And it will get pricey.
To give everyone perspective, so my book that everyone on the call has, when I decide to order those, they come up at maybe about $290 a copy for that colored cover, and then all the inside pages, and there's a little over 100 pages in my book. So just to give people perspective, and then when I ship them, I usually order 15 at a time, and my bill is about $45. So it comes to about $3 a book, maybe like $3.30 or something. Maybe it's actually $47, but it comes to about $3.50 is what I plan in my budget to include the shipping of shipping those books to me. But it's very affordable for when I'm then later turning around and selling the book for $20, or I will be changing the price to about $40 later because there's such good learning content in there. So, so it is very affordable just to kind of throw those prices. And then I could imagine when you're getting into the color, that 3 maybe is becoming 10 or becoming 12, and then you
could easily, depending on the number of pages and all those kind of details. Yeah, it could be as high as like 2 or 3 times your black and white cost. So yeah, it does get pricey. So I think you really have to evaluate how important it is to have color in your book. I know I've seen a couple of authors' works, and I'm like, maybe they just did a graph or something in color on a couple of the pages, and then they had to pay for full color for the whole book. I would say, go with a black and white graph. It's just, you have to do a cost and benefit analysis every time you do this, because a lot of people say, oh, well, I want color, and we do, and in all respects. I mean, because I've purchased print for many years, and I know that color can be expensive, and so you really need to. The costs have come down a lot over the years because we now have digital technologies, but they're still expensive. So you really need to do a thorough cost analysis before you do that.
Yeah.
What goes into that cost analysis is, let's say, just for round figures, let's say a book of the size of your workbook, and you want to do it in color, and let's say it's 3 times the price. I don't know if that's what it is, but let's say it's $10, now you're going to lose $7 of profit on every one you sell if you don't change your price. So
just because I thought color was so important, and I had to have that graph in color.
Correct. And so that's why you really, I don't really recommend it for things that are completely in text and maybe just have a little graphic of some sort. It just doesn't make sense. And again, it depends on the like we were talking about. It depends on the audience. If you're talking about a lot of kids or younger audiences that color might be important, well, maybe that's it. But then you also have to look at, well, what would people pay for a book like this? Now, we're going to get into this probably in a little bit, but, your book is something very different, and it's a workbook, so a $20 price is certainly reasonable for what they're getting. But if you're planning to sell on Amazon, you're going to have to do pretty much of an analysis of, what other books like yours are selling for, because if you're 3 times the prices of everybody else's book, you're not going to sell any. So then you need to make some hard decisions. So right, absolutely. One of our next question, it ties into a little bit of this, is book marketing versus marketing with books. So let me restate that because that can be a little confusing for people. So book marketing or marketing with books. And tell us a little bit about those 2 things and the differences, Heidi. And the difference. Now let's start with the marketing with books side. And Michelle, you in almost my entire network of authors are one of the shining lights in being able to market with your books. You use your workbook as an entry to working with you. So it really functions perfectly for that. It introduces them to you, how you work, what they're going to be expecting when working with you. So you have been a great role model for marketing with books. Now, a lot of people get confused with book marketing. Now, book marketing would be the type of thing where I just want to sell a lot of books. They can be sold on Amazon, they can be sold in bookstores or wherever they're sold, but the main objective is to get volume sales of books. Now, granted, you want to sell a lot of books. As a consultant and coach, you do want to sell a lot of books, but your end game is to sell your services and your coaching and all of your learning resources and everything else you offer. Whereas in book marketing, the only end game is to sell the physical or electronic copies of the books. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for sharing that. And actually, I was in that situation yesterday with the marketing with books. I went to there's a networking group I'm involved in, and once a month they bring a nonprofit in from the chamber so that we can all learn about the nonprofit and then figure out ways that we can help them in reaching their goals as part of our chamber networking group. And so I had met somebody there who is the director of a Montessori Christian school in town, and I had went to follow up and to meet with her, and in this hour meeting of kind of sharing my background and learning about their school and exploring how I may be able to help them, I had given her a free copy of my book. And, she was really excited about possibly joining the coaching club, and then, had heard about the prices, and she's like, oh, we're just not going to be able to do that. That's not in our budget. And I went to autograph her book, and she's like, you're still going to give me your book even though it's part of your program and I'm not going to be able to join them? I'm like, yeah, because that's my purpose, is just to help spread good around the world and to let people be able to get support in whatever way they can. And if you can't join the program, that's fine, but I still want you to have this resource, and I still want you to have this book. Now, she has no idea that the book only cost me $3. She doesn't know that. But by having the book, she now gets a much deeper level of what it is I do, so that when she does have that money, and when I mentioned that people in the past have found a donor to be able to just write that check so that the executive can get the support they need and they're not alone. So when she finds that, this book is reinforcing it. And she said to me, she's like, oh, I'm such a reader. I really love to read. I eat this kind of stuff up. I'd probably go through this book in a couple days. So she's going to be even more connected to wanting to find that donor to be able to get her to be in the coaching club, which is really cool. And it's never done by any means in a manipulative way, but knowing that book is making a difference in her life is what makes me really excited. And I can't pay that for a billboard or a radio ad. That cost me $3 to be able to help her out, give her information. And it may be she's not ready to work with me for a year or more down the road, but that's okay because I was able to impact her now, and that's the important part. So, so it's really cool. Really cool.
And you've used your book then essentially as your business card. It's a 100-page business card, and in that sense, it will do its job. Whether they sign on with you or not, it has gotten your name embedded in that person's brain from here to forward. As well, you made a good point, or a point about the $3 for the book. Now, I think that's where a lot of authors get messed up, is they say, well, I spent $3 on the book. I don't think I can charge like more than $3.95 for it or whatever.
Right.
And the thing is, it's more than just the paper that it's printed on. I mean, you are sharing your knowledge and your wisdom, and how much is that worth? So I think when people price books, they need to get out of the paper cost and think about, how much value am I offering? And so I just wanted to make that point, because there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, well, it was my ebook, it was almost free for me I can only charge 99 cents for it. I have some 99-cent type books, but they're like short title type things. I'm not going to give away my whole 120-page book for 99 cents. That's ridiculous, So
Right.
I think we have to get out of that mold of, well, it's just worth the paper it's printed on. So.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that point out because that is so important, and that's the thing that people sometimes don't think about. And one of the other ways I'm about to start using the book more is through speaking. I mean, I've used it in the past through speaking by saying, you make the sales in the back of the room and you sell maybe one or two books. But the free speaking gigs in the future, like for instance, my going into, let's say, a daycare and talking to a staff of 50 and talking to them about recruitment and retention and things like that.
Right.
I can easily say to that director, I'll come in for free, but you want each of your staff to have a book, and the books cost $15 each. So now I'm spending, they're paying $15 times 50 books, and that's my speaker's fee built in right there, as opposed to saying, well, pay me $250 to speak or pay me $500 to speak or whatever the heck it is. So there's ways to leverage, marketing with your books in that way too.
Sure, and I think we'll probably be talking about that in a few minutes when we talk about making money with self-publishing. So, but let's talk about. I think one of the next topics we want to address is book reviews because a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Oh, this is one of the toughest things out there because now the world revolves around the customer review. But I will tell you that when it comes to books, getting reviews is very, very hard. And I'm talking about the organic reviews online. And let's be honest, okay, how many books have you read where you haven't done a review? I know I have tons of them. I mean, I don't review every book I've read. And then, as an author, you're like, why aren't these people reviewing my book? Well, people are busy, they're busy, and there's that silent middle majority that doesn't want to be bothered. It's like they had a good experience, and they just moved on to their next purchase, their next book, their next life adventure, and so they're not going to bother reviewing. You'll find that sometimes the reviews may be the squeaky wheels. They're the ones who have a complaint of just about everything, or they're just plain out trolls who just are not satisfied with anything. You might have some of those, and I will tell you, do not take any of those personally. It's either an issue with the person, or sometimes those negative reviews can provide some valuable feedback as to what people would want. Some people would say, oh, well, I didn't like the book because it wasn't what I expected. Okay, and then maybe they'll tell you what they were expecting. Well, then maybe you can tweak the book to meet your audience's needs. So some of that can be valuable. Also, on the positive side, you're going to have some good friends who, will want to do a nice review for you. But I know I've even had trouble getting reviews with friends, even though I've provided a free book for them, or I've sent them a gift copy of the book. And, they'll say, oh, yeah, I'd be glad to review it. And then they never do. And then it's really awkward to say, hey, I gave you a free book. Where's my review? And so you really need to not get mad at them. They have lives. They're kind of like that silent middle majority who doesn't, who had maybe a good experience, but they've just moved on. And one thing I would caution on some of these book launches where, they give a bunch of free books away to, their friends, hoping that they'll get the friendly reviews. I always take those with a little bit of a grain of salt. When I look at a brand new book that's out there for 24 hours, and then I see that there's like 25 or 50 reviews, I am going to really look at that with a bit of suspicion. I'm going to say that those reviews may have been, I don't want to say coerced, but they were not gained organically. It is very rare. You know, if a book is out for 24 hours, there are some speed readers, and, you know, I read very, very fast, but at the same point, you know, I'm probably not going to put a review up the same day that it gets published. So you wonder how many of those are really genuine when you look at some of the others and you're getting jealous about, you know, their level of review. So in my opinion, I just want an organic review. I mean, if somebody has read my book, that's great, and they had a good experience and they want to share that, fabulous. Otherwise, you know, I'm not going to worry too much about it because I can't. There's very little I can do to control it. So don't take it personally. I think that's the big watchword here is please don't take it personally. And watch how many free books you give out for review. You know, that's a real popular strategy with some authors is they'll send out maybe 100 copies of their book. And you think, well, how many of those could actually have been buyers for the book? And you're thinking, well, how much revenue did they actually lose, especially for small niche books, which may not sell tons of copies anyway? How many sales did they lose by just giving away in hopes of reviews? We have to remember that there are millions of books out there and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of books on Amazon alone. So what you really want to look at is positioning your book properly in terms of the title you use, the subtitle, your book description, keywords, you know, all those search engine type of things. You want to make sure that it gets positioned properly, and then you'll get more targeted audience reading your work. But that's a little bit of a sidelight, but just to sum up the review issue, I just would look more for the organic reviews and not take it personally, whether you get negative ones, and if you don't get any, don't take that personally either. Just realize that these things take time. It could take months to get organic reviews, so don't panic. But you know, I would not worry about it. Don't take it personally.
One of the things you said made me think about an experience I had when I launched my book, and I started coaching people a little differently on it because of it. But I know when I did pre-sales of my book, which was wonderful because it allowed me to get some revenue in before the book actually came,
sure.
And then to be able to pay that first payment for the first set of books I was purchasing. So that was a nice strategy. However, I gave them, I pre-sold them for less money than the $20 I was selling them for later. And as you said, those initial people, they were going to buy the book anyway. And there were probably about 100 of them. They were people who supported me anyway. And when I looked later, it's like, wow, I don't remember if I sold them for 15 or I sold them for 10. I don't think I did 10, but $5 a book times 100 people, that's a lot of money that if I had not have done that. So what I had encouraged, what I've encouraged clients to do after that is to think of what you can do as a value add. Like keep the price the same, but give them something that's, you know, maybe it's a little recording or a little training on it, something that doesn't take you a lot of time, something that can be given to lots of people and is easy for you to do, but they're getting extra value by being part of your pre-sale instead of discounting that price, which is usually the default because those are the people who are going to buy the book anyway, and you're really losing out on some good revenue. So that was a hard lesson for me to learn.
Yeah, it is. It's really, it is a tough question. Pricing is a huge question, and some of it is a little more complex when you are putting together a price. And I know your clients working with you, you know, trying to find those key price points that you need to be at in order to properly market yourself and your business. So we're not going to go into that here, and certainly not on audio. It gets very, very complex.
Absolutely. But we are going to talk a little bit, Heidi, about can people really make money from self-publishing and a little bit about royalties versus revenues. I still don't even get that whole royalty thing. So tell us a little bit about, if we can people really make money from self-publishing? Let's get into that topic.
Okay, first of all, I will assure you that if you have a book for sale, like on Amazon or CreateSpace or at an event or something, and you sell one book, guess what? You've made money from self-publishing. But the question is whether you've made a profit from self-publishing, and that will take volume. And yes, you can make money from self-publishing, but as we talked about a little bit earlier in the book marketing versus marketing with books, again, how are you going to measure whether you are making money or profit from your self-publishing efforts? Are you going to measure that by how many direct consulting projects you get as a result of your book? Or are you strictly going to look at selling the book itself? I will be very frank with everyone that trying to make a living off of just selling books, whether they're print books or e-books, is a very tough road. There is extreme competition these days, and especially for self-published books. Those are tough because you have competition from the big publishers, and you have competition from a big thing out there called the Internet, because people can get information from just about everywhere. So you have to understand, and as we were just talking about that value add, what is the value you add by self-publishing? What are they going to get that's different from everybody else? What exactly are you providing? So yes, you can make money from self-publishing, and it really depends on what your objectives are. I do have friends who have made 5, 6, even 7 figures through self-publishing. But then I look at their models, their business models, and they are not just strictly selling books. They sell their books as part of their larger empire. So it is such a difficult question to answer. But yes, there is money to be made, but I think people need to understand how much is available, how much is possible. And, I've done some articles and whatnot, which they can look at on my blog. Well, how many people can potentially read your book? You have to do some thought process behind that when you are figuring out whether this is a worthwhile venture or not for you. And then we go back to what's your mission for doing this, what's your message, what's your purpose, who's your audience. And those are all those marketing questions over and over and over again. But when you are making money from just strictly the book, let's just talk about that for a moment. There's going to be 2 ways you're going to do that. It's either going to be through royalties or it's going to be through revenues. Now, when you talked about your workbook that you are selling at events, you are talking about revenues. It would be as if you were selling any other product. Maybe you were selling toothpaste or whatever. You are selling product. So that would be revenues. Now, the problem with revenues is that when you sell your books or whatever you sell, you're going to need to report that as sales income. You're going to also, because it is a physical product, you're going to also be responsible for sales taxes. So you need to talk to your CPA or tax advisor on how to do that and include that in your price. And so that's a whole other headache. And so that's why a lot of authors don't even bother selling direct to their customers, and they choose to just sell on Amazon or through CreateSpace or through Kindle or Smashwords or Lulu or whatever. And those platforms handle all that stuff for them. They don't have to worry about it. Also, when you are publishing, let's say on Kindle, let's just for example say on Kindle Direct Publishing, you're going to get paid in royalties. Now, a royalty works pretty much like a commission, and there's a split between you and Kindle Direct Publishing. On Kindle, authors make a 35 to 70% commission. There's 2 price points there, and it depends on what the price of your ebook is. If your ebook is less than, or at least this is as of this recording, if it's like I think $1.99 or less, then there's the 35% royalty rate, and then if it's above like $2.99 and above, then I think it's 70% royalty rate. And there's also a fee that they deduct from that for the size of the file of your ebook file. Because if you have a giant ebook file, they have to allot space for that on their servers, so they have a file size charge that's also deducted from that when they calculate your commission, or royalties I should say. Because they operate so similarly to commissions, I get them mixed up, and I'm coming from sales, so you have to forgive me for that. But again, it's just a straight amount of money on all of these, whether you sell revenues by selling your own book, or you get royalties from your self-publishing platform. That is considered taxable income, and they will send you a 1099 every year of what they've reported to the IRS of what they've paid you. So royalties work kind of like commissions. Revenues work like sales of any other product or service in your company. And the revenue side, of course, has all the sales tax issues and all kinds of other stuff involved. So you kind of have to decide, what is the best strategy for your business. If you want totally hands-off, then royalties are probably the best way to go. And if you're really integrating it with all of your other services and products, then, revenues. You might have a mix of both. For example, you may sell it online on Amazon, and they handle that, and then you sell it at events. So you could have a mix of them as well. Does that help clarify some of it?
Yeah, it really does. And that royalty amount, when you mentioned the 35%, 70%, I mean, you were talking about ebooks. It translates, of course, into the printed books. And in the printed books, you have the added expense of the shipping, like we talked about earlier in the call. So they're taking care of that, and you're not physically taking a book to be shipped.
No, and when you do figure out how much your book is, one of the things I do like about CreateSpace, and I'm sure some of the other platforms have this too, is on CreateSpace they have a book cost calculator where you punch in the number of pages that your book is and your book details, whether it's full color pages or black and white, and the size of the book, and then it calculates how much your cost is, and then it's automatic. And because they have like per page fees, because if you have a really thick book, it's going to take a lot more paper, and paper is expensive. So that calculates everything for you. So I really like that. I think that's a really cool feature that they have on that site, so you can figure it out. But yeah, there's a lot of costs that go into everything. And one of the things that I think a lot of authors forget, especially if they have hired editors and proofreaders and book designers, is that you're going to need to make a return on that investment. Let's say you spend $2,000, hiring people to proofread and design your book. It'll take you a long time. I mean, in the self-publishing world, to make $2,000 from a book could be a while. So again, it goes back to, what is your mission? If your mission is to use your book as part of your marketing program, like you have with your workbook, well, then it's more of a marketing cost than it is just a straight book. So again, it's so individual for every author, and what I think authors forget too is that they're in business when they're in writing. You know, you're never just writing just for the fun of it. Once you start putting yourself onto the market, you're in business. So those are some of my thoughts. Questions that you came up with.
One of the, I guess just to kind of put a lot, like kind of give an example for a lot of what you just walked through. Like when I first did my book and put it up there, gosh, I wrote the book over Labor Day weekend. So this October will be 2 years since I've had my book up. And at least the whole first year, maybe year and a half, I chose not to put it on Amazon because I didn't want to deal with the royalties and all of that. A lot of mine was giving it to somebody when I was meeting them or giving it to a client for a class, and there weren't lots of sales. So we haven't had to deal with a lot of sales tax in my business at this point. Fast forward to this past January, which is probably about a year and a half time, a lot of the focus now in my business is on starting to create passive revenue. And as we're wanting to push the book more, I realized a couple times that I did want to get the book to somebody and I had to take it to the post office. So I mentioned the $3 before. Now I'm going to the post office. I'm taking time to do that. It's costing maybe $6 to ship it. So now I'm at $9 for a book. So now I'm like, well, if I just make it available on Amazon, which I then went and did, somebody can just get it there themselves. Now I can't autograph it, but that's okay. So that is going, but yes, I'm not getting a lot back in royalties, but I'm not going to the post office. I'm not paying the $6 for shipping. I'm not having to deal with all of that, and they can instantly get the book. And then and I'm also looking to start using it in a lot of my in a lot of the online things. So as part of an initial, when somebody gets on my list, to afterwards send them a quick little pop-up that says, hey, here's this book, do you want to purchase it? Well, I haven't had the book in an ebook because it was a workbook format. So we are going to be shifting it into an ebook to give them two options. Now it doesn't have to be mailed at all. They instantly get it. And instead of all the lines and the questions, we'll just be listing the questions because they can just answer them there, so it becomes smaller. So it's nice to kind of see the evolution through what you talked about in those examples. And at first it didn't make sense for me to deal with royalties and all that because of the business model. Then the business model shifted, and it's like, yeah, this is easier to just let Amazon do this, and the royalties really aren't a big deal. So it really depends on need, like you were saying, and that need can shift in your business as your business shifts.
And I think one of the things that I think a couple of the people asked about was, how do I get buzz and how do I get, promotion for my book and things like that. And that's really, again, going back to that, marketing with books question, and how are you? That's really a difficult question, and you've gone through some of that mental process here. Of okay, well, does this make sense for me to offer it this way? Does it meld in with my overall marketing plan? And I would say that those people who are looking to do like the book marketing side of it, they're more concerned about that, and then they want to get buzz and TV interviews and things like that. I will tell you that's a tough road too, because there are so many competitive forces out there. So I think being realistic about your expectations of book sales and how you are going to measure your success, and then constantly, as you've talked about here, monitoring what is happening with your book and your business at the same time. I think those are really key elements that some authors totally forget about. Is that it's so integrated into your business, and you really do need to keep monitoring things as time goes on.
Absolutely. And to the PR that you mentioned, being able to get on TV and do all of that, there is a local company in Naperville that does that really well, and someone I know from networking who use them, and but it's very expensive, and they have their contacts. They've gotten her on TV. They've gotten her in a lot of like media things, but the investment, I'm looking at what she had shared with me, it looks like $2,500 for 3 months. So about $7,500 to get that support and get out there. So so when you have the people who are investing in that kind of thing, they're going to get on those places, and those companies have the contacts and are going to get them there. So it does make it even harder for someone who's not making that kind of investment and not using that kind of firm to be able to get that exposure.
Right. And again, think about that cost. Let's say it is $2,500 for, like 3 months to get that kind of PR. And then the book sales have to follow.
Right.
To make that worthwhile. Unless, again, as we're talking about, unless that's part of your overall marketing program, and the book sales are just ancillary to whatever you're doing, if just being able to have the book to get on the shows or whatever. But again, you really can't, I don't think you can evaluate any particular marketing strategy, whether it's for your book or for business, until you really decide what your objectives are. And I think that's one thing that people who have just launched into publishing after maybe being in business for many years, they're very confused by that. They think this is a whole new thing, and it really isn't. It is just another tool to help you sell you and the value that you provide.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, she's actually an esthetician. So they were really focusing her as being this skincare expert. And so she did some things on local TV, like let's say the Channel 9 News kind of thing, where they had gotten her on there and had a little segment on how to take care of your skin for the summer, and she was the expert. But again, $7,500 was the investment, because she paid that $2,500 3 different months. So that's a huge investment. And is that bringing in the amount? What's her long-term gain? Has she seen that come in esthetician services? Because I don't think you're going to see $7,500 coming in for book sales.
Right, exactly. Because I mean that is very rare. And just a little side note with royalties, and this is kind of funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's sad. When you're traditionally published, not self-published, but a big publishing house has taken you on as an author, and they've paid you in advance. And the royalties you get from book sales are going to be minimal. I mean, like a few cents. Right. I went to an event where a speaker was traditionally published by a big publisher. And he said, well, you can buy my book, but I only get like 50 cents or whatever out of it. And then somebody in the audience said, oh, I have your book. And he goes, well, thank you. I just made 50 cents. and she said, oh, no, I borrowed this from the library. So if you're getting into publishing to make money, I'm going to tell you that's a long, hard road, and you have to really, really understand the business and have a lot of connections and whatnot. So I think the better strategy, especially for small business, is the marketing with books scenario, where you're using that as a tool to get people to know you, to trust you, and to find out more about you before they book with you. So.
Right. And I think even in the case of, we have a lot of nonprofits who are part of the coaching club, and sometimes the book may be used to raise dollars. And I think even in that case, it's the same situation. It's I was just at an event this past weekend, big national speaker, and there were at least 1,000 people in the room, and we all walked away with bags of a couple of his books that were there. Now, there was a $35 ticket, so that $35 ticket was paying for his $3 a book to give us those books, and then the extra money went to his cause. And then they also made a big pitch for for his cause while we were there too. So
Sure.
so he's doing the books to be able to make revenue, but it brings in extra raising dollars in the process. So kind of like you said, the marketing with books, they're getting the extra fundraising, but it's not coming necessarily from the book sales. The book is the tool that's getting them the rest, even in fundraising.
Right. So wow, it's a lot of stuff here.
Yeah, we've gone through a lot, and the one thing I know I saw a couple people list in the group that I don't know that we got too specific into, and I don't know that we need to get too specific, but the question was about successful online book launch, and people were wondering about, a successful live book launch versus online book launch and things like book signings and things like that. Anything you can share in that area for the group?
A live book signing, I don't really recommend them. Actually, you know what? I do have, if they go to my blog, I do have and you know what? I will update that on the handout. I do have a blog on live book signings and what the possibilities are with that, because that's a tough kind of an event. Unless it's melded into another event, having just a book signing can be expensive, and you might even lose sales because I've been to some of these book signings, and some of the books kind of like walk away because people are looking at them. So anyway, I will send definitely a link to that post on book signing events. But an online launch, I always wonder what people mean by that. I don't know what that means, in all honesty. I don't know if they want to do a webinar or if they're doing advertising, or what they're going to be on social media with it. With Facebook Live or something, you could do that really easily and inexpensively. Like from your business page, you could say, I've just launched the book and here's what it's about. That's a possibility. Whether that is going to be successful, again, we have to go back to what do you hope to achieve by doing this online launch, whatever particular channels you decide to use. I don't really know of anybody who's done a really successful online launch. There may be a couple of them who have done a little bit better, but I just don't really, I don't even know what that, in all honesty, I'm not trying to be funny, I really don't know what that means, because whether that means advertising or it means like a webinar or some sort of presentation, that's a possibility. But I don't know what people would be expecting. Would they be expecting people to just see this and then jump over to Amazon and buy the book? Again, what are you doing with your marketing, and that will determine what you would be using in terms of online channels to launch your book.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people in the group who are doing some online launches with just with other things that they're doing, products, services, that kind of stuff, and it's probably following those same best practices. And of course, like you're saying, going back to what your goals are and things like that. To the book signing point, a great example you kind of said, it depends on, oh gosh, excuse the phone in the background. For the book, let me let that ring, sorry. At the beginning of the call, Heidi and I both turned off our landlines, and I hid the phone so you wouldn't be able to hear that. And then Ben came into the room I was in and had wanted to watch the TV, so I moved to the basement. And I looked at the phone when I sat down, and I'm like, okay, what's the chances it's going to ring? Let's get started. There's chances were pretty good. We got pretty close to the here, and it rang. So such is life. But I just wanted to point out with the book signing, like you were saying, Heidi, that it really depends on a lot of things, whether that's going to be successful. And Stacey Montgomery, again, to use her as an example, one of the things she's doing with some recent journals that she is putting out for kids and girls empowerment is she's wholesaling them. So she's going into a store, and then the store is carrying these books for her. And a couple of the stores have actually asked her to come in and do book signings. And that's a perfect example of how that can work, because the store's already, they have the customers, they're wholesaling them, and so they have the excitement. And so that's a great example of how a book signing can work really well. But then I've also had clients in the past who have done, come on out and I'll sign the book. And it's more, I think in those situations, I think Karen and Tina in the group have both done that with their books. And they were great celebratory events, like being able to celebrate with their family and their friends. Yes, I finally did this, and I have my first book, and come out and celebrate with me. And so it was more the celebration. Yes, some books got sold in the process, but the number really low. So again, it goes back to, what's your goal? I don't think either of their goals were let me sell tons of books. It was, let's celebrate with people, and in the process I'll get some books sold, and that'll be good. And they enjoyed the events, and it was great. So yeah, it's really, like you said, looking at the goals and what you're looking to accomplish. But so great. So thank you for speaking on those. And the one last question, it wasn't in the group, and it's something I've thought of as you've been talking a lot, that I want to ask and see if you have any thoughts on really quick. It's about ebooks. You've mentioned ebooks a lot as we've been going through, and I know a lot of my clients as well as myself, we have content that we've been giving out to people. And so you have content, and it's sitting there, and some of it you start giving as free content. And how do you know, when do you know, like, this is a twofold question. So when do you know that this is a good thing that would be good for an ebook as opposed to just a resource you're handing out? And then the second part of the question is, what's the easiest way to pull that book together? Is it simply a Word doc? Or like I had a client who was doing a free offer as a handout, and it was a white paper, for lack of a better word. And I'm like, oh, that would look so much better in a cute little ebook. So I went into Canva, and they had an ebook template, and I was able to like kind of change some of the fonts so they were bigger and smaller, and there were some visuals in there. And when all was said and done, it was much better looking than your typical Word document that would be an ebook. As well as I know sometimes, designers on Fiverr or something like that can take it and put it into an ebook for you. So I guess that's the two-part question. Like, when do you know that, yes, this would be a good thing to be an ebook as opposed to just a resource? And then what's the easiest way to do it?
Okay, well, when do you know if it's an okay time? Well, you know what? I would say again, we keep going back to the same question. What do you hope to accomplish by, because all of us have probably an archive of materials that we've created over the years. How do you know when it's ready to be an ebook? Again, it depends on what do you want to accomplish with the ebook. What do you hope to achieve with that? And besides book sales, I mean, I think we have to get out of that mindset for the moment. What do you hope to achieve by selling this ebook? For example, I just put together one recently. I put actually two together. One on blogging and blogging for profit, and then the other one on time management. Now, I had some objectives with the blogging thing because I'm trying to build some additional learning resources on blogging, so I thought it would be a great introduction for some people into me and my publishing universe for people that I didn't know. And so that's why I was doing that. And I did a free ebook promotion and that sort of thing to help build that interest in me as a resource on blogging information. So that's why I did the ebook. I have hundreds of articles just sitting there, that I could create into ebooks, but what is the end game? And so usually when I do an ebook, it's because I have something else in the hopper mentally that I want to introduce people to me in a way. So I don't think there's like a certain point where you say, oh, okay, I have 5 blog posts and they're all on the same subject. I guess I got an ebook. That doesn't really, I mean, you can do that all day long. There is absolutely no barriers to you doing that. But again, why do you want to do it? And then the question is, well, okay, if I've decided, okay, I have an objective for publishing this ebook, and then what do I do with it? Now, there's people who say, well, I'll just do my PDF ebook. Okay, first of all, if you're going to do a PDF ebook, there's just all kinds of questions with that. How are you going to sell it? How are you going? And usually Kindle, like, and some of those platforms do not take PDFs. So you're better off just doing the Word document, and it doesn't have to look super pretty, especially if you're going with Kindle. It has to be readable, and it has to flow correctly, but in terms of the look of an ebook, it doesn't matter. And here's why. Because when you're looking at a book, like say a Kindle book, it is multi-platform. It's the same issue with websites these days. They have to be responsive. So when you have this Word document that you upload to Kindle Direct Publishing, it has to flow and look good on an iPhone, on an iPad, on a Kindle device, and on a PC. So it's constantly moving the text to fit the device. So it's not going to really matter how pretty it is. It's going to matter whether it looks good on the device. Now, I don't know about some of these other e-publishing platforms, but I know on Kindle Direct Publishing, they give you a preview of how it's going to look on each of the devices, which is really helpful because then you can see, oh, that doesn't look good. My readers will be really ticked off if they see it in this way. So I would suggest, just leaving the Word document, especially if you're going with a Kindle option. You're better off making it readable, and the user really decides how they want. In fact, the user will decide the size of the font. The one caution I would say on ebooks is graphics are just really, really difficult. Graphics and tables are extremely difficult. So if you can get away without using them, all the better.
Got it. Well, that was awesome. This has been really, really great, Heidi. I really appreciate you taking the time to enlighten us in all these areas. And I wanted to share with everybody, as I mentioned at the beginning, Heidi, she does have a nice resource page for us, and there's tons of ways that that Heidi can be a support. She does have a blog, and when you sign up for that blog, and this is all on the one-page sheet that we have attached, when you sign up to be part of her email list, you get free ebooks from her every month on a lot of these topics, and as well as weekly tips. And Heidi's emails are great. They're really short, to the point, and they give you information on all these different topics like self-publishing and networking and writing. And there's also, you can purchase the whole library of her self-publishing tips, as well as register for a Udemy course that she has on self-publishing ebooks on Kindle. And then a lot of us know Heidi from way back when, and Heidi has kind of shifted her services recently. So when I was doing my book, Heidi was kind of working on being known as a book coach and coming and getting help and support through that whole book writing process. And that's no longer part of Heidi's focus. She's really kind of, like a lot of us, been looking at adapting her business and changing her business and streamlining things. And so the one focus is getting educational tools out there for people. The other is to do editing and proofing. And so when you're trying to figure out, like Heidi has said repeatedly, what's your purpose on why you want to do a book? What's your purpose on why you want to do an ebook? And she does have a service to where she helps you kind of figure out when you have that initial concept, is this really something that's worthy to move forward in another book? And there's tons of, as I mentioned earlier, all the topics we've discussed, Heidi has blog articles on, and you can find those, and she's listed some links to the different topics that we've discussed today on her blog, so you can go and read a little more about that, get some more clarification on the topics that are most relevant to you. And with her editing and her proofreading, and there's a difference between those. People kind of think of them as the same, and I'll let Heidi explain that really briefly in a second. But with both of those, she's been having great success of finding clients through Fiverr for this. And one of the things she mentioned to me before the call is that since December 31st, all of her clients she's been working with have all been new clients, and she's been finding them online, and she's been finding them through Fiverr. So she's figured out a way to take the big project of editing a piece and to make it into a manageable, here's the first little thing I can do for you, and then that builds into a future client. And so if you're curious on how you might be able to take your business and do that kind of thing, definitely click on her Fiverr link, even if you don't have an editing need right now, because I think it's a great business model that she's kind of hit upon and she's using. So any of that you want to elaborate on, Heidi, or clarify the editing versus proofreading?
I will, yeah. Well, yeah, 2 seconds, and we'll get that, wrap that up. Editing is looking at the content itself. It's looking at whether it's clear, whether it's cohesive, does it have continuity, does it sound like the author is writing it, does it have the author's voice evident in it. So it's looking at the message, whereas proofreading looks at the mechanics. And the mechanics would be spelling, grammar, punctuation, word use, all of those little nitty-gritty details. So there's a definite difference between the two, and usually editing is done first because you could have a perfectly proofread book that fails in terms of its message. So so you definitely want to start out with the critiquing and editing first, and then you move on. Proofreading is really close to the final production phases of your book. So I hope that clarifies it in the 2-second drill.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you again. Any last words that you want to share before we wrap up?
No, it's been wonderful to catch up with you, of course, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share with your group here, and hopefully they'll have a lot of success with their books and ebooks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.